Anyway.
Well, on here, I'm kind of giving the media, attempts to start a little bit of leeway, but we're going to be ready. Oh, okay, so it's 5 o'clock. I'll call a meeting to order. And so welcome everybody, welcome Jill, and welcome Channel 32 or 32 and a half. Administration. Marian is sick, has been sick for a couple of days, did not sound at all good when she spoke with Jeff on the phone. Jeff didn't even recognize her voice.
But she has that flu.
Yeah.
Dave Edmonds is excused. I believe he's in Calgary for so I will offer the invocation. Our kind and loving Heavenly Father, as the elected council for the town of Cardston, we convene in thy presence and pray for guidance. Father, we thank thee for the blessing that we have to live here in this great community. This is a great land, it is a free land, it is a productive land, and we are so blessed to be here. Father, we ask for thy guidance as we deliberate on issues of importance, that we might discuss openly, that we might deliberate with clarity, and then arrive at decisions which will be of greatest benefit to the community at large. Again, we thank thee for all that thou hast given us. We're grateful for the dedication of councillors to serve here and for dedicated administration. Father, we ask again for thy guidance, and this is our prayer in Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Now, we have one addition to the agenda. The golf management group, I think they probably still call themselves the Black Sand Management Group. We'll be here as a delegation in about 15 minutes. Okay. That's the only addition. So I will call for a motion to adopt the agenda with that one addition. Councillor, Court so moves. In discussion, seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor. The agenda is hereby adopted.
You got it written down.
We now have the need to adopt the minutes of the council meeting of February 12th and also the public hearing minutes. Jim, can we do that in one motion?
No.
No. Councillor Dahl moves adoption of the minutes for the council meeting of February 12th. Discussion? Any comments, any concerns that were uncovered as you read over those minutes? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And minutes are hereby adopted for the February 12th meeting. The chair will entertain a motion for adoption of the minutes of the public hearing. Councillor Creed so moves. Any discussion on the motion to adopt the minutes of the public hearing of the same date? Seeing none, I'll call that question. All in favor? The minutes for the public hearing of February 12th are adopted. We'll jump right into pretty much our sole or single or only significant item, unless there's some things come up in committee reports. The EBA Hill monitoring costs. I'm going to ask Jeff to give us a brief skeletal outline. We've got a couple of decisions to make, and Jeff will kind of walk us through that. We'll need some discussion on it. And I'm sure as you've read through it, you've got some ideas as to where to go. But tonight, probably the only way we'll go, at least in terms of the decision, will be regarding, do we want to incur some costs for hill monitoring? There's some other discussions out there involving lots or no lots for individual or individual so on. But tonight, I think it'll just be limited to discussion on hill monitoring and what the costs will be. So, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You'll recall from Mark Sabrin's presentation that he suggested that the approach he is recommending is a monitoring approach. So in this email that he sent me, he outlined what they do for the city of Lethbridge and then kind of summarized what he would recommend that we do. There's two distinct parts to this. One is an initial survey. So they would put stakes in key locations in both sites and have those officially, have a surveyor come out and locate those with exactness and survey those exact locations that are sensitive or ones that would be beneficial to monitor. Then after that, he notes how they do They would come do some reconnaissance, site reconnaissance twice a year, excuse me. They would come out during extreme precipitation events. They would provide annual reports. His recommendation is a budget allocation of $12,000 for both sites. I'm going to be honest, that's a bit higher than I thought it was going to come back at when I initially met with him. And so I've tried to call Mark a number of times. We haven't been able to connect since I got this. And I tried again just before the meeting, just so I could talk to him, but once again he was out of the office. I don't have a recommendation for council per se, but if I were to kind of thinking about a way to go through this, and like the mayor said, limiting the discussion right now to the hill monitoring costs, because this is a small piece of a much larger issue that council needs to spend some time on at some time, but that information isn't prepared for tonight. It may be reasonable to do the survey and identify those key locations and get them surveyed. And I'm thinking that in-house with Brandon, we could do a lot of the data, not analysis, but we could collect much of the data on an ongoing basis. Maybe it was quarterly or probably semi-annually would be fine. And particularly after large precipitation events, we could kind of keep track of that and consult with Mark where necessary. Now, what we would be giving up in just doing that is we wouldn't have their third-party opinion year to year. That's one thing that would provide. I'm not entirely comfortable with that cost, to be honest. And I know I don't quite understand all the research and the analysis that goes into these types of things, but I do think there may be some value in establishing the sites to monitor and getting those professionally surveyed, and then monitoring those from there and working on the go-forward plan. But fairly straightforward. We know we need to keep some kind of eye on those, but as part of that larger discussion someday, we need to discuss, so once we know, now what? So we gather this information, we have this information.
What do you do with it?
And now what? And so you'll see in my background, or one of the things I said is that with council taking a more proactive approach to hill monitoring, it may be a good idea for us to develop some type of policy on how council wishes to deal with properties impacted by hill sloughing. So it's one thing to gather the information, it's a whole other thing to have a plan on dealing with it if there's impact. So that's the essence of the proposal by Mark and some of my thoughts and comments on it.
Something I don't understand is what is the legal ramifications does the town have on these hills if they slump into somebody's property?
Right.
But that's an interesting question, and as Jeff and I talked, he'll answer that. Whose property are they slumping into?
Yeah, in these cases, it's a little bit interesting because most properties are falling onto themselves. You know, if you look at Gerald's, the escarpment of the hill is falling onto the hill he owns. If you look at the Orr property, their property line's not at the side of the house, it's up the hill. And I get that everything above it is impacting it, don't get me wrong, I don't wish to diminish that at all. But at the end of the day, particularly with the Levitt residence, his hill is falling into his hill, which he owns almost right to the bottom, the farther south you go. So it's an interesting question. We have another property next to the Orr property immediately west that has not been impacted, but I would acknowledge even in the last few years the hill is beginning to encroach closer into the yard and closer to the back door of that property. And that's another one that we need to determine, you know, the council needs to determine what's our position. You know, that if we're monitoring, we'll give you good heads up as best we can, and that's our position. I don't know that. That's a debate to be had.
Councillor Kronen.
If I remember a while back when we started to look at the Levitt property, we wanted to know what other municipalities were doing. And we looked especially at the Lethbridge.
Yeah, we looked at Medicine Hat too, if I'm not mistaken, Councillor. Yeah.
But there was at least Lethbridge, and I remember that in Lethbridge, the town does not view themselves as responsible for any hill slipping. So I'd like to know, do they have a policy to that effect? Because we know that the province would not entertain helping unless it's a major disaster and considered a major disaster. So it leaves it to the municipality to develop, as you said, their own policies. But I would be curious to know how far other municipalities go to all help with the hill from not carrying on the slippage like they seem to be doing in some parts of Lethbridge? Or is that left totally to the homeowner to take the hit?
Right.
Another question we might want to ask is, some of the properties have been impacted because we've done a study on it, and some of that slide right, the slumpage supposedly has a line right through the yard. Could they still sell that lot? And whoever buys it, just buyer beware? Or is the town preventing that sale? Or do we have the right to prevent that sale?
We have one lot right now, and I apologize, Councillor, we may not be talking about the same one.
Okay.
But we have a lot in town right now where there is conditions on the lot that it can't be built on again. So there's a home on it, it's occupied, and it can't be built on again. Now, I would suggest, because I've talked to the owner of this, if they were to provide plans showing mitigation against hill slippage, to have a home plan officially engineered specifically for that location, may be reasonable for council to entertain that construction. But right now, as it sits, it is what it is.
Well, we seem to be putting both sides to the middle. We don't want to take responsibility for a lot, but yet we're telling some people they can't build on that lot, because even though it's their responsibility. You know what I'm saying on this? I mean,
But that's a matter of safety for the public.
it could
right?
be. It could be.
That's safety.
The person, I think we're talking about the same home, he says it hasn't slept in 100 years, according to him. But that's another discussion.
Councillor Smith.
I was just going to say, yeah, the gentleman that came in, the engineer that came in and talked to us the other day, he said,
Saturday.
yeah, it had nothing to do with the, you know, the hill slumping into the house that created the house to collapse or whatever. He says any house, if it's engineered correctly or whatever, can be put up there or whatever. Right? So as long as whoever's building on there, I mean, as long as they're aware that they need to, like what Jeff was saying, make sure the house is engineered to withstand anything like that. But they said there's no rebar, no anything in the concrete there, and that's why it actually had nothing to do with the hill slumpage.
Well,
It actually was just
Yes and no.
construction. Yeah, it was just
Anecdotally, the engineer went on site in that particular home with
Right.
no rebar in the basement. And the family member that was with them, Jeff was there as well, insisted that there was a mound that hadn't been there, you know, when she maybe lived there. I don't know, I'm guessing what she's saying back then. She's probably 40 years ago she lived there. But they went and took a
It's tobacco.
backhoe, I was going to say Franco or backhoe, and the engineer got right down in there. And he says, there's been no movement here. So here we have expert advice, and this gentleman is very well versed in hill slippage. I mean, he's got a ton of experience in dirt movement. So and of course we all perked up our ears when we heard there was no rebar in that home. So anyway, so here's a proposal I'd like to make. And if someone wants to make it in the form of a motion, I like the idea that we begin a monitoring process with our in-house engineering technologist, Brandon Jensen, and monitor that in 6 months from now, and get a report back. That's my philosophy.
I would support that.
So if someone is, Jeff, is that gonna?
I'll throw this out, I don't know how we work this in the motion, but just so I'm clear and we can proceed, would council be comfortable with, I'm not proposing the $12,000 cost, but would council be comfortable with some costs so that maybe Mark can work with Brandon and we can set a benchmark of the good locations, the important locations to Mark? That's going to cost us a few dollars for Mark's time and his expertise so that we can, you know, have it monitored appropriately. I'm suggesting around that $2,000 area. Would council be relatively comfortable if we went down that road?
That was the question I was
What's your
going to
estimated
answer,
cost, Jeff?
or ask. How much expertise does our guy have? Would he benefit to work with this guy a little bit?
Right. We met, if I could, Mr. Mayor, we met when Mark came down, I had Brandon there, and they discussed at length, you know, kind of what would be necessary. Brandon's relatively comfortable once the benchmark would be set to be able to have, you know, kind of take data on semi-annual occasions or after heavy precipitation. Yeah, he feels that it wouldn't be anything that would require, that he wouldn't be comfortable with. And he's been fine-tuning. We have some GPS equipment that, we have a piece on the sewer treatment plant which sets the benchmark for the GPS reading, and then we have a reader that goes from that. He's been getting that really fine-tuned so that that's working well, and I think it's something he can do.
I think I'd like to entertain a motion, and if there's further discussion on the motion, we can do that.
I'll make the motion.
Were you making that motion?
I was going to, but I'm comfortable.
Okay,
But basically what Jeff has outlined, that's what I feel would be very the best solution. That we do work some with the engineers, but we talk them down so that we do most of the monitoring in-house and rely on some of their expertise.
Often the engineers get to send down a technologist from his office anyway, so we have the technologist, we can do it in-house. So basically the motion is what Jeff said, right?
We got all tomorrow to make it sound real good, eh? It's fine.
Councillor Dahl.
Do you have any idea, Jeff, what the cost might be?
I'm going to say it's going to be around a couple $1,000s. I would think by the time we have them give us feedback into the most appropriate locations to mark, and then potentially have those surveyed officially, so we have the exact measurements on them. I would say about $2,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion? I will call a question. All in favor? That motion carries. Thank you very much. So Jeff, with the motion, you're good to go with all the direction that you need. We'll keep as much of that cost in-house as we can. I want to welcome to our gallery Mr. Cahoon, Dr. Olson, Mr. Bennett, and Mr. Sommerfeld, affectionately known as Dale, Wendell, Mark, and Dean. At least that's what we, So, gentlemen, welcome. And I don't know if you want to try to gang up on us. We actually have recently been qualified and certified in martial arts. So just don't get too aggressive. But if you've got whoever your spokesman is tonight, there's the podium, and
Yeah, I've never been in the Army, but I've got volunteers.
We've heard nothing but good reports. And in all honesty, you've all heard the saying, no news is good news. We have heard virtually no news of the nature that we heard in years prior. So that's a huge positive step. So Dean, the time is yours.
Well, let me take a couple of minutes and explain a little bit why we're here. And before I start, we're starting our third year of the lease with the golf course in our 10-year lease. We appreciate town council. I think this is the first time as a delegate that we've been back to town council. And we just have a few concerns that we have, and we just want to clear those concerns, but also we want to thank you for working with us. And it's been a very admirable partnership between the two groups, and we appreciate it. I guess one of the reasons we're here, and we might clear one rumor up that we hear on Main Street every now and again, is that we're making buckets full of money. And our buckets are pretty small. And
you can't quench the rumor, though.
Yeah, that's right. And so it has been reassuring that we have been able to pay our bills, and that we have been able to continue to operate and maintain the golf course in such manner that we're happy with it. We've enjoyed doing that. Let me tell you a couple of things that we've done. We've planted over 200 trees. I'm going to have a handout for you at the end, and I'm just going to kind of briefly go through this handout, and then we'll give you the handout. Then you can discuss it and do whatever you do at the town council after everybody leaves. But,
yeah, what do we do?
Yeah, that's what I've asked the mayor a couple of times, and he doesn't know what you do. So. We fixed up all the sand traps. Our sand traps was in bad array. We've added 7 new sand traps. We've added some metal security fencing around the clubhouse area, around our new building. We've paved in front of the clubhouse. We've done a lot of course beautification, boulders and planters and fountains, and we've hired inside and outside crews to do that. the spin-off to the town is immense, and I'm not sure how we would monitor that, how we could tell the town, the public, your taxpayer. But the spin-off for what our golf course does is, as Dale's running the golf course on a weekend, I mean, there's people from Calgary, from Red Deer, from Airdrie, from Medicine Hat, they're from everywhere that comes to golf our golf course, because it's one of the best golf courses in southern Alberta. Maybe all of Alberta, but it's a great facility, and so we're proud of that facility. But there's a lot of spin-off that comes, and not just on the weekends, during the week as well, and so all of that helps. They fill up with gas, they eat at a restaurant, they do different things, and so that part of it's good. A couple of the concerns that we have, and some of the reason that we're here is because we're just not sure if you're aware of some of our struggles. Hole number 16 was our biggest concern. The hill slipped away. Alberta Disaster had met with us, they had met with the town. We have met with them numerous times. Randy Jensen's part of our group. He's not here, he's at a school meeting, and Ralph Price is also part of our group, and Wendell Webster. And so we've met numerous times with some of the engineers and some of the people, and they give us our recommendations, and we went ahead and fixed the hole number 16. We spent $15,000 on the fairway, and we spent $8,000 on the green itself. That was the dollar amount that Alberta Disasters told us that we could spend, and I rounded those figures off, and the invoices, I believe Marian has the invoices for all of those, the exact numbers. We did that early in the fall. It's actually the town's responsibility to fix that because it was damaged prior to us taking the lease. But the town, as we talked with Marian, didn't have time to do it, and didn't necessarily have the expertise or the knowledge how to do it. So we said we would do it. Maybe we shouldn't have. Maybe we should have just left that up to the town. But we decided we would do it for a couple of reasons. Number one is because some of our guys on our group knows what they're doing, but also because we could do it on our time frame, because we didn't want to do it in July and August. We wanted to do it at the end of the season. We wanted to do it when it was the best time, so it didn't interrupt any golf. Since though the $15,000 and the $8,000, we haven't seen any money back for that. So we haven't been paid for that, and we need to be. And so, but we've had some problems as far as maybe it's a lack of communication, but I think we've given all of the timesheets. They needed to know itemized what we did, how many sprinkler heads we did, and if that's not in place, that's what we need to know, because as far as we know, it's in place. We have given everything that we know that we needed to give. So there's those two items. There was another item on that same, they had also allotted 200 meters of cart path to the tune of $27,000. Alberta Disaster did that. But when that bill came in, Marian had that bill sent straight to the town. She had issued us a purchase order number, and so I'm presuming that bill has been paid because we never seen that bill. So part of that Alberta, so I don't know if you have the money from Alberta Disasters or if you're still waiting for it. If you're still waiting for it, then the pressure needs to be put on to the next level up so that we can be paid. The next issue that we have is, and we can answer some questions when we're done here if we want. The next question is, we have the raw water line is supposed to be brought to our property. So the property of the golf course is where the water is supposed to come to. And as we need that water there, this time of year, in another 15 days when Greg starts, the middle of the month, middle of March, the irrigation water is not turned on. And so he needs to go up to the pump house and he needs to prime that, I'm saying 4, maybe 5 times a day. And he checks it quite often so that it doesn't cavitate, because it needs to have water because the flow of the water is not there. Our concern is that number one is that we're paying him to do that. Number two is what happens if something goes wrong, that that's not our equipment, that's not our stuff up there. So we don't know if we need a letter of liability so that that doesn't happen, or if we can give you a bill for the hours that he spends taking care of that, or if we just phone whoever that water person is, Bart Atwood or Tim Bevins, whoever, to come and do that. But we don't want to do that 4 or 5 times in an evening while we're watering the greens in the tee box for the first month of the season. So that's a question that we have for you, and I don't really know the answer to that. I think the best answer for us would be for Greg to keep track of his hours. We pay him $25 an hour. He's up there for 2 or 3 hours a week. We just submit a bill for his labor to take care of that equipment that's your equipment up there. That would be probably our recommendation, but I'm not sure. So I'll just leave that for a second. We had an issue right at the entrance of the golf course. There was a contractor come in, and I do not have the contractor's name, but the contractor came in to put the water line from the corner of the golf course property down the ditch so that it crossed the creek, and it's now down to where it's into the Remington Reunion Center. Then it goes to the, I believe it goes over to the campground and then over to the Remington Museum. So they put that water line in there. As they put that water line down that ditch, we used to be able to mow that ditch. We can't mow it anymore because it's all full of rocks and it's just a mess. They never did clean it up. They also damaged our fence that we had there, our pipe fence, and that has not been fixed. We have done some landscaping and some things, but I don't know if that contractor is coming back to town this spring, but we need that to be taken care of. But the biggest issue that we have is that as that contractor turned the water pressure on when they finished their project, at that part of that project, they turned the water pressure up to 300 psi. It should have been at 120 psi, and it blew a bunch of our sprinkler heads. And so we ended up incurring an $1,800 bill for sprinkler heads. That money needs to not come from the town, needs to come to us from the town, but it really needs to be part of that holdback of that contractor's money, because they know that they did that. They knew they did it. They went and fixed the problem. They turned it back down to the 120, but they kind of messed up there, and so they blew a bunch of our sprinkler heads. Our disadvantage is that as that happened, there was a bunch of lines that pulled apart. We're going to incur problems for the next 2 or 3 years, and we obviously can't ask for anything that's going to happen from here on type thing, because we don't know if that's just regular wear and tear or if that was something that was caused by these guys. But we know that there was $1,800 worth of damage because it all happened that next day type thing as things started bubbling up out of the grass. So that's a concern to us.
Where would the sprinkler heads be? On the driving range, or?
No, all through the golf course. We had leaks everywhere.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You didn't actually wreck any sprinkler heads,
It
it separated all the
pulled the
lines.
pipes apart.
It's too much pressure. So we just had to go down and dig them up, go back in, push them back.
Okay.
So
Are
mostly
they-
labor.
Labor mostly.
Mostly labor.
Okay, but it adds up.
Yeah.
You have an invoice for it, yeah.
Okay.
So are those pipes, are they polyethylene pipes, black poly pipes?
No,
Or are they
some
PVC?
Some are
They're mostly white.
mostly
Yeah.
white.
Oh, the white PVC
Yeah.
pipes?
It's a real pain, you gotta dig up,
Yeah.
5
Well-
feet each direction.
Well, I know if they split, they just keep on going.
No, it's not like the black ones where you can patch them easy, it's,
They didn't really split, they just came
Yeah,
apart
pulled
with the
apart.
pressure and they just had to put it back together.
Are they, what kind of fitting do they have?
it's glue. Just glue them up.
They're just glued, oh, just glue the joints apart? Okay.
So those white pipes are part of the original irrigation system there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the next question that we have for you. In 2010, before we took the golf course over, there was a screen in the water system up on the hill that before we got the water. And that screen, to my understanding, was too fine. And so that screen always was plugging with dirt and debris and gravel and rocks. A town employee took that screen out, and there was no more plugging of the screen because the screen wasn't there. The water would come down. When we incurred the lease in 2011, we started having a lot of problems with gravel, rocks, twigs, all that kind of stuff. Halfway through 2011, We realized there was no screen there. We came to the town, we came to Marian and said, we need to buy a screen. We need you to buy a screen. And she says, we realize there's no screen there, but it's not budgeted for until 2012. So halfway through 2011, we bought the screen for $7,000. The town paid us in 2012 for the screen. So we've been paid for the screen, but we have a half a year's worth of taking sprinkler heads apart and fixing them, and they had springs that was busted in them. And so we have every one of those that was documented. That some just wear out. Those ones are understandable, but the ones that we actually had to all tear apart because they was full of everything, we incurred about a $7,000 bill for that because there was no screen there. And it wasn't one of our employees that took it out. It was taken out before we incurred the lease. And so we feel that that $7,000 should be something that we would be reimbursed for.
So are you calling that labor?
Most of it's labor, but I think there's probably some costs there because some of those heads was destroyed in that as the rocks would come up into them and that. So there is
A
some.
lot of heads were destroyed,
Yeah.
and a lot of the fittings and things. And Marian has that too.
She has that breakdown.
We put every single breakdown specifically, so she has a breakdown of every hole and the location of that particular break. So she's got that completely written down.
Thank you.
The next item that we have, and we're a little bit confused on this one, and so we need clarification. We were given a bill for irrigation water this year at the end of 2012 for $1,813.50. Our understanding was, there is a meter there, but when the Levitt Irrigation sells water, we're under the understanding that it's $11 an acre for irrigation rights, and we have the rights, the town owns the irrigation rights for that water that goes onto the golf course. So we thought we was going to get a bill for around that $440 range, and we got a bill for $1,800, and we're not sure why it's the $1,800. We're not sure why the town is making money off the Levitt Irrigation District. Now, if there's some changes in the figures that we don't know about, then we just need to know so that because we don't know what to budget. We've been budgeting about $440 because that's what we thought our water would be.
Well, that's based on our acreage times the dollar amount per acre.
Times the $44 an acre, or sorry, $11 an acre for the 40 acres comes to the $440. So that's what we was anticipating. And as I was going through this today, I find it interesting that we either have too much water or we don't have enough water, and it seems like all of our issues that I have with you is about water. Everything else is good. We just got water issues. So it's kind of interesting that water is the issue. Oh, maybe this next one's not water. This next one isn't water. This one's hail. So it was solid water. We have a paragraph in here that that I will give you that's part of our agreement. And I will let you read that because it's kind of lengthy.
Yeah, let's hand it out here.
You want to hand that out? Turn it to that page, Mark, and they can read that.
It's on the second last page. Thanks, Mark.
I'll just give you a minute to read that. That paragraph, it's the highlighted paragraph.
Is the word hail something you added?
That's the word that we added. Yeah, tempest.
Interpreting tempest.
Interpreting tempest, that must mean hail. Mark sang us a song, but you don't want to hear the song. He's not that good a singer.
It could also be other casualty if you didn't like the word tempest.
Now, as you've read that, here's our concerns a little bit, is we took we took a pretty major hit because it happened on a Friday, so we were shut down one weekend. Then we had to work all week, and we were shut down the next weekend. So we were shut down about 10 days where we couldn't take any green fee, we couldn't take any golfers. So we was out considerable amount of income for that 10 days. As rumors have it, there was rumors that said, don't go golf at Cardston because they're gone for the year because their course got destroyed. So we had to alleviate some of those rumors that was flying in other communities, and I'm thinking some of the other golf courses started the rumors because then they could keep their golfers at home, but that's besides the point. But we've incurred, and I don't have a number for you, but we incurred having to buy a lot of extra sand because we have to go over our golf courses, we have to aerate them, we'd have to roll them, we would sand them, then we would aerate them, and we would roll them, and we would sand them. So we did a lot of manual laboring, extra fuel costs, extra labor costs that we could have had our men doing other jobs.
And you reseeded them all.
And we have to reseed them all as well. And that green seed is not cheap. We can't really put a dollar figure on what we actually lost, so we don't know. We're thinking somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 is what that hailstorm probably cost us. Now, as you've read that paragraph, it says that there is the word lands is involved there. It also says insured, and I don't think you can insure your grass. So it's kind of a gray area for us, and so we're here just asking to see if there's something that you could help us with, and we just would like that clarification. The last item that I have is that we actually owe you some money. We owe you $10,000 for the last year's lease agreement. We did not pay you that $10,000 because by the time that was due and 16 was done, we was waiting to trade checks, and so that didn't happen. We also owe you $8,500 for the amount of labor and machinery that you billed us as we put up our new events tent or our storage tent or whatever you want to call that canopy that we put up. We had the town do the landscaping, the excavation for that. So they took out all the black dirt, they put in some pit run, and then they put in some gravel, and so we owe $8,500 for that. So we owe $18,500 to the town, which we're willing to pay, but we've kind of been waiting for that disaster relief money to come because we don't have the $18,500 to pay you until we get reimbursed for what we've put into that green and that fairway of 16. So as I go through things, 16 is yours. That's kind of, that's your responsibility. That's not ours because that's dealt with through Alberta disaster.
And there will be more problems in the future.
And when we will anticipate more problems. If we have a wet spring, that whole hill will slide again and so will that green. We asked Alberta Disasters, can we relocate it? And they said, we have money to rebuild that every year if we need to. We said, wouldn't it be cheaper to relocate it? And he says, our mandate is we will fix what's existing there, but we won't relocate. Now that doesn't make sense to us, but as I was with Randy Jensen and we talked with Ernie, and I don't know Ernie's last name. Yeah, that's the one. That was his. And he said, yeah, I would like to see it moved, and he says right there would be the great spot because we showed him where we would like to move it. At some point, the town may want to entertain moving that one fairway, and that would cost us $100,000 to move that fairway. That's about what it would cost. But meantime, we would still continue to fix and rebuild and do what we need to do. But
Are you saying that disaster services is they're gonna continue to fix that slope?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Well, not the slope, the green. They haven't fixed the slope.
Well, the slope, but the slumping areas or the cart path, we relocated the cart path to the other side of the fairway instead of where it was because it all sunk away.
So any slumping that you get is going to be, they're going to continue to cut you a check every year for the...
If it cut you a check because it's your ground, not ours, but to cut you a check, yes.
Makes a lot of sense.
Because it's not ours.
I'm surprised.
And he wasn't negative about it because he said the exact same thing. He says it's kind of a stupid system we have, but that's how the system works. So the green will slump again because there's lots of water on that hill and there's probably no way to hold that.
Well, it's been sliding for years, so.
Yeah. We probably need clarification, and I don't know if Marian talks to Ernie very often. When you go up the cart path on number 9, back up to the clubhouse after you finish golfing, that hill is slipping onto that asphalt. He said he would allow us $3,000 to hire somebody to take some of that dirt out and put in a rock wall or whatever we needed to do. But we've been hesitant to do that because we're not sure how long it's going to take us to get our $3,000. And so that's something that you can discuss, and I mean, if that's approved, then we will do that, or else we can have you just do it because it's part of the Alberta disasters. And so either way, the town can either do it or we can see that it gets done, but it probably needs to be done before it becomes a worse problem.
Council, any questions or any further comments from the audience?
I just like the concept of us being the middleman. I mean, Dean's talking about all these problems, and I think in our opinion, it's your golf course. You should be dealing with these problems, but we kind of got caught in the middle. Not only get caught in the middle negotiating, but then we're paying the bills and then trying to get the money back. And as he said, we don't have the money to do a lot of this stuff. And we're just wondering, like, really you should be negotiating with maybe the government and paying the bill, and then you get reimbursed instead of us waiting for you to get reimbursed and we get reimbursed, and it's, you know, 3-6 months later and we're sitting here in trouble financially trying to make this happen.
Jeff, you had a comment.
Well, go ahead if there's council questions.
Okay, go
or
ahead,
comments,
Councillor.
it's fine.
I want to thank you for that presentation. It's enlightening. But I also feel that we as council are not well prepared to really discuss the matter, since we didn't get the background to really understand it all.
Yeah.
And so I think we need a little bit of time to, first of all, have administration present their side of the story so that we get a full picture of what the golf course management has offered and what we need to know from administration. Then I think we'll be more prepared to move ahead with this issue.
Now, Marian was sick yesterday and today, so she hasn't been able to prepare any background for us, and so that goes to Councillor Kronen's comment. Dean, go ahead.
With that comment, and that's exactly, and we appreciate you working us in because we wasn't even on the agenda, and so we appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't expect, and neither does any of our group, expect any answers tonight. We want you to go home, do some homework.
We need to be informed.
Exactly. Visit with Marian, because Marian has all the invoices and the numbers. We just mostly wanted to share with you what our feelings was, and so that then we could start the ball rolling from there. So yeah, exactly. We don't expect anything. We don't expect you to come up and give us anything right now, but in the near future would be great. I mean, I guess if all of this seems overwhelming, I guess you could just phone your lawyer, you could have him sign the deeds over to us, and we'll take care of all of these problems. I mean, we're willing to do that, so.
Jeff, you had some comments.
I think my recommendation when Dean was talking about this was how do we wrap this up? When I talked to Dahl, I started gathering information, and I've got a little bit of background on each of the items that Dean talked about. I've got the invoices, I've got all that stuff, but I would agree if the group here is amicable, we can do a very thorough exploration of each of the issues, you know, and bring it back to the committee meeting even next week potentially, right? I just, I apologize I wasn't able to have everything here. One, because I didn't know exactly all what Dean was going to present. So I have a little smattering of everything, but to avoid just volleying stuff back and forth here tonight without really being able to come to any conclusion, if we could prepare something to address every one of these things to council, you know, I think it's perfectly fine and reasonable. We could probably have it for a week from today. But I'm just not prepared to speak to each of these issues in depth tonight.
Well, and that's actually a good idea because we have committee of the whole in a week's time. And so if we've got that background to work from. Councillor Dahl.
My question is this. You lease the golf course. You pay us the lease rent for it. When does our responsibility end and yours start as far as the maintenance of the land is concerned?
The maintenance of the land, I believe, probably the mowing the grass, the trimming the trees, the removing.
Yeah, but repairing, etc., as a result of a hailstorm or whatever.
That's my question to you, and we're not sure either. I don't know that I have the answer to that. I don't know.
Okay, comment over here.
I know I wouldn't be standing here at the end of 2013 if every long weekend we get a rainstorm and we're crying the blues because our revenues are down. I know I'm not standing here asking for any considerations for that, because that's a common rainstorm, and that we're all growing men, and we knew that was a possibility.
The hailstorm was extra.
The hailstorm was extra. If we have a huge flood and we wipe out 4 of our holes, well, I'm going to be standing here again. But you know, so there's a line there, and I don't know if I know that, Councillor Dahl. I don't know if I know that line.
I don't know if we've talked to our insurance company or not, but I would think the hail damage should be covered by town insurance.
Well,
again, I don't know.
See, the town has been good with, as far as the buildings, because the roofs has been fixed. I think the clubhouse may still need shingles. I'm not sure about that one.
There's one little maintenance to be done.
Okay.
It might be done now.
It might be done. I know they put the new skylights in the cart sheds. I mean, anything that was that way was done. I don't know if I don't know if you can insure a green, and if it is,
I don't know either.
I don't either.
How did that work there? Was the group supposed to have insurance covering the buildings?
No,
the town.
In the contract, that's yours.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, that's
We
yours.
had insurance on our golf carts and the equipment and things like that.
Yeah.
Follow-up comment here.
Well, I think just to mention again, this could take a long time if we're going to start splitting a lot of hairs on a few things without the information. But I think the important thing for council to understand is we've had 2 extraordinary events since the Black Sands Management Group has been involved. One was just prior to your involvement.
Just prior.
It was the flood. And the other was the hail. And the gray area with insurance, to Councillor Court's question is, yeah, is solid covered. The answer from the insurance, obviously, their default position is no, it's not. And lost revenue and goodwill and those things, those are very difficult intangibles to put a value on. But yeah, to your point, Councillor Dahl, I agree with Dean in the fact that, well, I agree that with his assessment that it's been these events that have caused some above and beyond maybe what was anticipated going in. And I would also agree that the money from disaster hasn't gone smoothly and things haven't flowed like we've hoped and all those things. I would absolutely agree. But I think we could put together a very thorough package for you shortly.
Okay.
We can't control a natural disaster.
Dean, anything else that you needed to get to us? Does that about wrap up your presentation?
That does wrap up my presentation. I guess let me clarify one thing is that I don't want to shoot myself in the foot because if 5 of you are sitting there saying, yeah, well, let's just give them the $40,000 for their lost revenues, that'd be great. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't know that I expect that to happen. Just because that number is out there someplace and that can't be done, but maybe we could have a concession on one of our lease payments, maybe one of our $10,000, maybe 2 of our $10,000, or whatever we could have. Maybe we could have that. I really don't think that any of us expect the town to sit there and just write us out a check for $30,000 for green fees that we didn't receive because of the hailstorm. So I don't think we're here for that, but we're just here to see if there's any concessions that can be made.
Okay.
And again, council, I appreciate we've had a fun time running the golf course. I hope we've taken, and I think we have, a lot of your headaches away. And I honestly think that we haven't created some of those headaches, that it's been better for us than we kind of thought it would be. Actually, it's been 2 years now, we're into the 3rd year. All 7 of us are still friends and talking. And so it's actually been very good, and we're happy with the outcome and are enjoying helping our community and helping the golf course to become a better facility. And so we appreciate
I wouldn't
you as
mind
council.
hearing from Dahl, because Dahl or maybe someone else sees the book when people sign. What are the kinds of things that you're hearing from people that come and your green fee players? What are the kind of things that they're writing down in the comment book? What are the kind of things that they're telling our staff about the course and the what you call the golf culture that's out there now?
Well, our whole philosophy was to be the least expensive, the most beautiful, and the friendliest golf course. And if you could read our comment book, and you're welcome to look, it even astounds, I think, all of us, of just how much people from all over love our golf course. They think the Cardston is the best golf course anywhere. And it's, and that's probably the most exciting thing for me, is to be in there and have them say, we loved your golf course, you know, we're coming back. Our goal at the start was, how can we become profitable? Can we get the person who comes to our golf course once, can we get them there 5 times? That was kind of the whole idea. We're getting those people. We get people every weekend, you know, foursomes and eightsomes come every single Sunday or every single Saturday. And it's made a real big difference. But the comment book is just amazing. There's never a negative. There's always, we loved your course, this was great. And a few things we hear, probably the comment I hear the most is from the women. This is the women's favorite course anywhere. And it's just because it's designed so well. One thing I would like for you to do, because I've seen Councillor Edmonds up there, but I don't think I've seen Rick in the clubhouse. But anyway, I'd like you to come up and take a tour. Come see what that golf course looks like now compared to what it did 2 or 3 years ago. It's just Greg here, who's our manager, done an amazing job, and people love the greens and they love the wildlife and everything. So yeah, I think it's been wonderful for the town. I think people are just so excited to come here. So anyway.
Well, that's good. Any other comments or questions, Council?
I have one comment. On the back page, you were given some expenses. Those are very approximate. You can get those expenses from those that turn in. We looked at a few of them are a few $1,000s off, so
Yeah, no, I've got
but you've got those.
Yep.
Did we leave one for Councillor Edmonds, so that he will have one?
He won't even be back next week. Well, he might be back to the meeting.
Yes, fair enough.
Our next meeting is the night of the 5th. I don't, he might be back then, I'm not sure. Do we know when he's going to be back?
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Dean.
Dean.
Thanks, Wendell W. and Wendell O. Greg, thanks a lot. What'd you do for the winter, Greg?
Pardon?
What'd you do for the winter?
Just got back from Mesa.
We don't like any golf.
Actually, I worked down there more than I did anything.
Did you?
Did it snow down there,
Dale, Mark,
Greg?
thank you very much.
Did it snow
Thank you.
down there?
Held where I was, that was further south. where the
Okay.
snow was.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm glad not to be in the golf business. I'm glad not to be in the campground business. Okay, I don't know that there's much purpose in discussing it any further until we've got some background information in front of us. But there is one thing that I wouldn't mind, well, I better wait until next week when we actually do the whole.
Well, I think by waiting, we'll be better off.
Yeah, I think so. Okay, so let's get back to where my agenda is.
Financial report.
So let's go into committee reports.
Financial report.
Financial report.
Oh, sorry, financial report is here. Any comments or questions on the financial report?
I have 3 questions. We have taxes receivable about 81,000. Do they all apply to the 2012 year, or are they older than that?
Jill, Mr. Mayor, Jill might be able to speak to that.
They're 2011, 2012 is most of them. There are some that are from before that, but not many.
What do we do about those?
They can go to caveat and then tax sale if it's that far out, but we are making phone calls and trying to get them paid.
We have a policy for collections.
Yeah, we've had a policy.
And so you're basically following policy. You go to caveat when you've exhausted all other options.
After 2 years.
After 2 years. That was going to be my question. 24 months and you can go to caveat.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's older than that?
After 3 years, then it goes to tax sale, and we don't have any that are at that point yet. We've got a couple that have agreements for payment, but nothing that's at tax sale.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Second question, Mayor.
Yep.
We have trade receivables of 650,000. That seems like a big number for the town. You know what it is, Jeff?
I'm trying to think. I'm wondering if we have some, grants that we know we've got approval on that we haven't received yet, is what I'm guessing. I think some of our transportation and water, wastewater grant and stuff get approved early, but we're not doing the projects yet.
Okay.
So I'm thinking that's probably what those are made up of.
Third question is, are accounts payable all current?
Our payables?
Mhm.
They certainly should be, yeah. I can't think of anything that would be behind.
And we don't have
with
any-
the exception of a couple of golf course ones we just talked about.
We don't have an income statement with this.
Pardon me?
We don't have an income statement.
Yeah, Noel omitted a couple of pieces, including the budget report, just because we're transferring things into a new budget system, and she's just knee-deep in audit right now. So it was early enough in the year, she'll get it for the next one, she felt.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we accept the financial statement that we have received.
Okay, so it's moved to accept the financial statement as received. Any questions on that? I'll call a question. All in favor? Motion carries. Financial statement is accepted as received.
Councillor Court needs a 2-minute break.
Councillor Court needs a 2-minute break.
Return and look at the motion.
And we'll get into the, so we're going to go in just a little. I think the mayor will take a 2-minute break as well.
Just enough in the light.
Just enough.
You don't need me.
It was just plot.
You were hidden,
It's
David.
good here in the delegation, but every once in a while they'll lean back and they lose them.
Exactly, yeah. If I'm not comfortable, it's just,
Can't
You're doing
focus.
good,
that's right,
David.
can't focus if my feet are not reclining in the chair.
When you open the store?
David, let's not even talk about that right now. Still a ways off. I gotta have my holiday first.
You've been on holidays.
I haven't, I'm not stressed, I'm not
De-stressed?
de-stressed yet, yeah, all of that, yeah. Not
You need
de-stressed.
to go golfing though.
Well, actually, you probably could have this winter, I guess, eh? It's nice enough out
Yeah,
there.
it's been some nice weather.
It's actually been really nice this winter. Beautiful weather.
Were they open all winter, the golf course?
No, they probably actually could have, yes.
No, they locked it up.
They locked it up?
Yeah.
What, in October something?
You play with a black golf ball, you could probably.
Yeah.
Use an orange one to be all
Sometimes
right.
on your golf carts. And
What's that, David?
Use an orange golf ball.
Yeah, you'll find that. Yeah. Use a white golf ball, you just have to look at the name line and the snow. Yeah.
So Jeff, while we're waiting, I was wondering if, that you had that call from Leonard on
Yeah.
Friday, is it going to come to the next week's committee of the whole, or is that something that needs to come to council?
We're going to, well, I guess it's not a forgiveness rather than permission thing, but no, we're going to go ahead and start the process. We're going to bring it back, highlight it as a change when we set mill rate.
Okay.
Next week.
So, well, it won't
Well,
set mill
no.
rate till almost
In
end of
it-
April.
When the mill rate budget comes out? Okay.
We'll just highlight it as a change
As a
between
change.
your approved budget in December and then.
So it's
It
not-
won't, it's no material change. on
No,
the
it's
bottom
not,
line.
it's not a big deal. It's
That's
just.
why I wasn't worried about it, because it wasn't changing the expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just gonna bring it back then.
Okay. That'll,
So,
yeah.
He'll go ahead and start getting a bunch of those meters ordered,
Okay.
because he's supposed to have the full report tomorrow
Okay.
from the guys.
You're walking pretty good.
Not too bad. Still a little sore, but getting better.
Okay, so agenda related, we are at the point in time where we'll take committee reports. First of all, the town council motion list is there as well. For any questions that might come up. And then the next item is this committee reports. So let's start off the top with Ag Society. I think that's Councillor Edmonds, and he's away.
No, actually, that's mine.
And that's
Yeah.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, nothing too exciting there. They were just kind of looking at ways to maybe increase usability of the facility there, so they're trying to come up with some ideas, and they could just have some events that they're trying to plan to bring more people into the town as well.
Okay. What do you hear around that council table about maintenance and operational costs. Is that building, because it's getting on in years,
Well, I know they're installing a new door in there right now, and I think they're gonna have some repairs done on the roof from the hail and things like that, but I mean, as far as, yeah, I guess there's always ongoing costs or whatever, but I mean, it doesn't seem too pressing at this point in time right now.
now you go back to a new door that you say was damaged by the hail?
Well, no, the roof was damaged by the hail, so they're gonna, they believe we're getting a new roof for that, and then the door, they're replacing one of the large doors that's on there, so I mean, they're coming up with the funding for that to do that as well,
Okay.
so.
Jeff, with Marian being ill, do you know where that puts us with that IMDP meeting, meeting with the county at 10 in the morning?
It's not happening.
Okay,
I was going to tell you before you left.
Okay. Thank you.
I talked to Marie about 3 o'clock and we just decided we would postpone it just a bit.
Okay, all right.
The agenda
So-
wasn't solidified, so.
So we'll get that rescheduled, we'll have, okay, so Councillor Creed on the airport.
Yeah, okay, well, we talked a little bit about some of the airport concerns at our planning session, so I won't bring those up again, other than, I'll just mention that they have scheduled June 15th for their annual fly-in that you might want to just be aware of.
All right. South Grove.
Okay, on March the 13th, you should all have received an invitation to come to a South Grove planning meeting and Water for Economic Development Project presentation. It will happen at the Lethbridge Lodge Hotel, 5:30. It's networking at 6 p.m. and there is a buffet dinner.
What's the date again on that?
It is March the 13th, it's a Wednesday,
March 13th.
5:30. All council members are invited, as well as CEO and EDOs.
You say March 13th?
Yep.
Networking at 5?
Yes, 5:30, 5:30, networking,
At the
Lethbridge Lodge.
Where at?
Lethbridge Lodge.
Lethbridge
Lethbridge Lodge.
Lodge. It's an important meeting because, first of all, there is an interesting presentation regarding one of our projects, but also part of it, there is a planning session that will be there that will help us to understand what municipalities would like to see South Grove do for them. So it's an important one.
Now, what kind of an RSVP are they requesting?
I think if you reply online, it will go, or Marian could do that, collect.
It might be easiest if everyone
If we
responds
find
in the
out
next few days,
here.
tell me, we'll send it in to Mary.
Yeah, that's what I'm
The other
wondering.
thing is we could possibly still have it on the 5th as a deadline because we will be meeting, and that's a week, that's 8 days ahead of time.
Oh, so why don't we put it as a request for decision on the committee
Yeah.
agenda?
Yeah. There is something about South Grove that is interesting because Jeff is involved with it. South Grove is participating in the Old Man South Saskatchewan Modeling Project, and that is being managed by Alberta Water Smart. And I think Jeff could talk about that committee that is part of.
Chair's okay with it?
Yeah, you betcha.
I did just think that old man modeling sounds kind of
But that's what it's called.
I know. The Old Man Modeling Project is a project where they are taking all the waterways in the basin, in the South Saskatchewan Basin, and basically tracking and getting data on their flows and their behavior, essentially. And then what it's going to allow everyone to do is you can run scenarios against the model. So, for example, if we were to take the town of Cardston, we could say, what would it look like if we were to build storage upstream on the Lee Creek at this capacity if we wanted to keep the flows of the Lee Creek at a certain level through the dry times? Now, those are the kind of things you can model, and they can figure out kind of what capacity you would need and what would happen. And then specifically, then they've broken that project up into facets, one being economic development, which they've asked me to sit and represent the southern communities on that committee. And so we've just talked about things like, tourism and recreation and water for industry and business and procurement of licenses and value of licensing. And anyway, what this intends to do is you can run any scenarios through this model, be they economic, be they environmental, and kind of see how that will play out for your community and what the results may be. So it's a very neat project. It's a little over my head as far as the programming and the modeling side of it, but I think it has some pretty neat implications that we'll be able to access here very shortly. In fact, they're going to try and, it's next Wednesday, I think they're going to unveil the base model of everything, so it should be neat.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Move into Communities in Bloom. Councillor Creed, we're coming close.
Actually, about a week ago, we got some volunteers together and we constructed 8 more planters to go around the trees on Main Street, so we have enough to finish the 200 block on Main Street. I don't know when we'll be thinking of putting them out, but they're now made and ready to go.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Chief Mountain Solid Waste Authority.
All right, we had a meeting just last week about the Chief Mountain Solid Waste, and one of the items of interest, of course, is still the study for better practices. What we decided to do is to postpone it a little bit because I needed to get a little bit more information regarding the possibility of the study. And I have drafted a document that I will present at the next meeting. Maybe if you want to kind of pass this on. Thank you. Essentially, if you turn the page over where there's a little bit of full paragraph there, to try to explain a little bit what's happening over there. So the Chief Mountain Authority is comprised of 11 municipalities, from Cardston to Raymond, pretty well, Hill Spring to Coots, and of the Blood Tribe. And we all have different ways to deal with our individual waste management. Essentially, all the waste end up in a landfill. And as you know, we have a restricted tonnage as to per year to 10,000 tons. The tons are growing, some of them are growing like Raymond, and waste is increasing, but we carry on sending all the waste and divert it to other landfills like Lethbridge, for example, or other landfills that will take our waste. Essentially, that study is to try to see how can we deal with that waste ourselves without having to divert it to other landfill by using best practice on recycling, reusing, and reducing. So this is why I thought that the study could have 3 stages. Some that first stage with an assessment of the existing practices and an economic sustainability study based on assessment of present management practice. And then we need to determine the future needs and how to maximize the economic sustainability of the regional authority. And we need to explore what are possible options in management of the waste and from an organizational design point of view. Operation efficiency, effectiveness, to impact the economic sustainability. In stage 2, I thought what needs to be done is to evaluate the different options and to start to look at the best one that we could determine for our needs. And stage 3 is to elaborate a plan that is essentially environmentally sustainable with recommendation for a model for municipalities and for the landfill regarding reduction, recycling, reusing, education program, drop-off yard waste composting program, and also an economically sustainable, organizationally sound, and operationally effective and efficient. So that was a proposal I looked at many ways different towns deal with that. I have looked in BC and was very inspired by the Kitty Mat project, and came up with those recommendations that I think hopefully would be an eye-opener for the landfill authority to move forward.
Good. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for your work in that project, and it's an ongoing exercise. Is there, and of course this could open up an avenue which would involve a lot more cost, which I don't want to do, but in the initial stages of the best practices for chief load solid waste, some thought could be given to this whole notion of energy from waste, Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Authority. So maybe we...
That is CIWA. CIWA is involved in that, and there is a site that's trying to locate a site for such kind of business to recycle waste to energy. But they have money, they have a plan, it's very costly, but it's something that's going to move forward. The location is not determined yet. Ben Goetz is the one who sits on that committee. We haven't heard back.
Okay. The reason for that is I was in my BYU quarterly publication last night looking through it, and they had some information in there on the biofuels and things from some folks in the chemistry department at BYU, and how they have been able to have installations where there's biofuel, et cetera, et cetera. So if this study that we're hoping for best practices, we don't want to
look at that too.
We don't want it to be derailed, but some subsidiary or peripheral comments about that, because when we analyze handling and management of waste and compacting, which needs to be a big component there, obviously we don't want to overlook this whole notion of the energy from waste, and not delve into it too deeply for the purposes of this study, because it could derail the whole thing.
Well, it will depend how well we can work with CIWA, because essentially if that draft is accepted, then we need to change the way we have to change a vision that is presently the vision of the authority, which is to truck and haul waste, and that is it. There is absolutely no sense of the future and the impact on the environment. So that will have to change if this is accepted.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And we'll watch for future reports on that. Thank you very much. Chinook Foundation.
We have some employee problems that we're dealing with. We have a retirement taking place at the end of the month of our chief mechanical man, and we have some construction problems that are dealt with in camera, which that's all I will say about it. Is there.
Now, in reference to the employee problems, and obviously we can't and won't bring them to this table, but does that relate to our lodge or does it relate to elsewhere?
Relates to this lodge here.
Okay, all right, that's okay. So that's about it then, Councillor?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Economic Development and Tourism.
At the last meeting there, there was some talk about senior housing and the importance of senior housing around our community, and it does have value and things like that, and they're looking at maybe subsidizing some kind of project, but the group kind of decided that maybe that's not the way that town of Cardston, because we had this discussion already with becoming a landlord for a project like this, so they decided to maybe, maybe it might be something that the Chinook Foundation or somebody might be able to look at or something like that. So, and then Reeve Curls says the county entered into a water commission with McGrath, which required a large investment from the county, and I'm just kind of curious, does anybody know what kind of investment that they,
$900,000 in change.
is that what it was?
I'm almost positive, yeah, $900,000 in change.
I never heard a number or whatever, so that's what it was, but.
Let me just ask a question. And this actually spills over into the Chinook Foundation. McGrath got into some seniors housing, and I don't know.
Actually went toward them.
Could we possibly, is there some value in looking at that model that got them there? Did it end up leaving the town of McGrath in a landlord situation? Did McGrath access the grants that are out there? How's that work?
I took a drive with Tom
Spackman
after one of our Chinook Foundation meetings down there, and he drove me through the areas he built. I can't remember, 6 or 8 or 10 of them. And more or less what they did was they developed them and sold them for basically a cost. And they're very nice looking, and I don't believe the town is the landlord, but it's a way of kind of enhancing and keeping their seniors home, that those that don't want to go to anywhere else, but they don't want to have a large lot. I thought it would be worth looking into. I haven't had much talk with them since then. Jeff might know a little more.
If you'd
Yes.
like, I can give you the 30-second synopsis of the program.
Please.
Okay. Council may recall, now McGrath was a little different. This is an initiative, it's called the, It's a capital initiative of the province to help reach 11,000 new accessible housing units by 2011. I say 2011 because the project is over. So I just spoke with the Deputy Minister of Municipal Affairs last week to discuss the program, because ECDEV was talking about it, and we kind of wanted to see if they were still looking at doing a few more units. We also wanted to see if they found that it was a benefit. So they added about 12,000 units to the provincial inventory of accessible housing. Right now, though, only 6,000 of those are completed. So they haven't been able to analyze to see if it's done its intended job. The program is currently closed, and they're looking to retool it in a way that I think for our area is the right way to go. And this is news to Councillor Smith, who's on the ECDEV board, but I'll report this back at the ECDEV meeting. They had some concerns, and they can see some long-term problems where this was a partnership project with the private sector generally. So the province subsidized the capital cost of units, and you could either rent them at a rate that was 10% below market value for 20 years, or in McGrath's case, there's a caveat on every home: they cannot be sold for 20 years for greater than that initial purchase price. There's no upside for the next owners for 20 years. They can't. It's part of the rule. But they're concerned that in 15, 20 years, they don't have accessible housing anymore, because all the conditions are lifted on all these units that they've spent literally probably hundreds of millions of dollars subsidizing. So they are now retooling and hoping to come out with a program again, probably not in 2013, but probably in 14, where they utilize the housing authorities or the housing foundations regionally, and specifically in our region would be the Chinook Foundation. So that if there was a need for semi-assisted living seniors housing or independent seniors housing like in McGrath, that would be something the province would partner with the Chinook Foundation to manage indefinitely. And they don't have a finite time frame on them where they revert back to the private sector and no longer are accessible housing. So that program, as it was invented and as it went forth in McGrath, doesn't exist anymore. But I think it is a good move, it's just my opinion, that they run these programs through a foundation like the Chinook Foundation regionally, so that perpetually they are still there as accessible housing models. Now, I know Councillor Court's concerned about the accessible housing model in our current foundation, but that's a debate for another day.
Well, I'm worried also about if we get into this and they want us to manage those as well, are we going to have to requisition for those as well as our lodges? Those are lots of questions that have to be answered before we jump into that.
And that process is just beginning. They see some faults with the program as it was set up. They accomplished their goal of how many units, but they don't know how that's going to accomplish things long term. So they're looking at some other options.
Simply put, just by way of comment, simply put, we've got a heavy number of seniors, and so there's my concern. If we could possibly, or say, call it 55 plus, something like that. So that, I'm guessing, is going to be for another council, 8 or 9 months from now, but it's something that I would hope that would stay on the radar for those who around this table are part of that council moving forward from the fall election of October of this year. Okay.
Yeah, so just one other thing. Community Futures, Tony Walker, who was at the meeting there, and they are having a business visitation program going through the town of Cardston, which is where they go and they talk to the businesses, get information from them, create a report on what's needed within our community, what we have already in our community with the businesses, you know, what would be nice for the businesses to have around here, even, you know, a report that potential investors can look at and see what our community needs and things like that. So for the month of February and March, they're going to be going through and talking to the businesses with that there. So I don't know if anyone's been contacted. I haven't heard from any businesses on that.
They just have their letter.
It's been started.
They started.
Okay.
They have started, okay,
Yes.
so that's good, and you know, it's nice to see the Community Futures present in town. Also, the business improvement loans that they've implemented as well, where they can get up to at least $10,000 to help improve the outside, inside, whatever the business, and whoever participates in that program there, they don't have to pay the taxes or the interest on those loans there. So it's nice to see them involved in our community there. So. And then as I left at 8 o'clock, so I don't know, Maggie, you were there for the rest of the meeting. Is there anything else that needed to be?
Well, there was, to add to what you just said, a meeting in town that took place here with the business community, with Tony Walker and with his partner, the economic guru of Community Future, James. And it was about business plans, and also Tony talked about those business loans and a little bit as to the process as to how to access money. Community Future being a government-funded entity, and them having about over $1 million in the coffers that they will love to be able to lend. So.
Thank you.
That's right, that's good.
Now, I call it fire department because ambulance is no longer part of it.
Yeah.
So EMS is just the fire department.
Maybe eventually we'll change that on
Anyway, fire department. So the fireman's ball was successfully done. I'm sure they appreciated our town participation in that. Other things are go back to their February 7th board meeting. There was some problems with the repairs on the roof of the emergency service building. Danny was in contact with Marian on that, and I'm not sure what it's at this point, but we'll have another meeting on March 7th. The fire ban signs for the county have been put out. The ones that they have, they would still like to get some more signs and put them at other locations, but we have those.
The county will pay for them.
The county, yeah, and let me see, is there anything else? I think that's everything that was probably pertinent at this point.
Thank you. FCSS, I believe that's Edmonds. Handy bus. Nothing. That's probably him. Historical Society, I think that's also him. Now, the Intermunicipal Development Plan Committee, as you just heard, it's canceled for tomorrow due to illness. Levitt Irrigation District.
No meeting.
Library is also Edmonds, I believe.
Can't have all those.
Yeah. Municipal planning.
We haven't met for a while because there hasn't been anything going. So
No business.
And we haven't met it for Parks and Rec since the last time we had a council meeting, I don't think.
Okay, no, I don't think we have either. How I called, I called Sean Singer, and he's no longer involved in that committee. So, Jeff, could we have administration, possibly Tara, call Arnold Mountain Horse? He is going to be the point man on the POW committee, and we need to start moving forward with planning the POW for this summer. There was some comment by Bianca that they wanted to have that powwow changed and have it be part of a greater celebration, which would be sort of, for lack of a better name, which it doesn't have yet, Moses Lake Days kind of thing, or Moses Lake Community. And Don't know how adamant they're going to be to move that. They might get some funding for it from the tribal council, they might not. Personally, I'm not in favor of putting that POW on the weekend of Labor Day because a lot of our people leave town for Labor Day, whereas with Heritage Week, a lot of people make it a point to be here. The weather's always nicer, and it sort of becomes part of Heritage Day. I'd like to see it stay there, but you never know what direction that will go. So Jeff, if you'll have Tara try to get that going between our three that have been very involved in that, Councillor Creed, Councillor Kronen, and anyone else that'd like to, and let's get started on that. So that's about it for committee reports. Municipal Affairs has advised us of that grant on
There is,
photography.
this is an important one that South School is involved with. You can see the South School logo below. It is something that I spoke about last time, but it was not launched yet. It's something like the Dragon Den, with young entrepreneur can come and learn how to pitch, how to do a sales pitch in order to access funds. And that is something, if you know of anybody who could benefit from something like that, there is a lot of money to be had at that session, and that Dragon Den, that I will have investors and I will have mentors right there. So if you know of anybody who is trying to get involved in knowing more about how to access funding, that is some way of doing it.
Is there an age group there?
No, there's no age group, but they will also have session for youth.
That may be something should go into schools, maybe the high school.
Yeah.
You know, let the kids know that, you know, there's a chance to learn how to be an entrepreneur.
Could be.
Could be something that would be beneficial to them.
So anyway, the orthophotography grant has been approved, $20,000. Jeff, any residual issues that we don't want to leave unaddressed? The chair will entertain a motion.
Yes, sir.
I will make that motion.
Councillor Court moves we adjourn. We are adjourned.
The 8th Ward fundraiser, would be glad to take your money.
Go to our 5th Ward fundraiser.
There you go.
Did you?
Same results.
We
Cost you money.
to Steve Gibbons.
Yeah, we might make it.
What